Most foreign buyers think that the purchase price is the biggest cost when buying in Medellin. The real cost shows up when you're already in the process, sometimes after you've already committed. My name is Andrew Macia with MedellinLivingRealEstate.com, and today we're going to walk through real situations that end up costing buyers the most. A lot of buyers think that once they've agreed on a price and everything looks ready, they're basically at the finish line. I'll give you a real life example. We had a buyer that was ready to close. We had gone through all the paperwork, we had agreed, we had signed the purchase agreement, and now we were at the notary ready to sign the deed, and everything was cool. The seller, however, didn't want to work with an attorney, just his real estate agent. The real estate agent and the seller brought the documents needed in order to close, but lo and behold, they were incorrect. So that held us back 3 weeks. And then you have cases where the delay was even longer. We had a pre-construction deal where the buyer was ready to close, had travel plans set to handle everything in person, but the developer had to resubmit documents to the city, and that pushed the timeline out months. So then our buyer had to adjust. He couldn't follow the plan that we originally laid out. In his case, he ended up having to leave the country and leave power of attorney over to someone in order to close on the deal. So time becomes a real cost, not because the deal falls apart, but because it changes how you go through the process. But even when the deal closes on time, there's another cost that shows up right after ownership. A lot of buyers think that they'll just make a few upgrades, maybe fix a couple of things, and they're done. But what starts as small changes quickly turns into a bigger project than expected. I'll give you my own example. When I bought my first property, which is this one that we're sitting in right now, I had to go through 5 contractors to find someone that can do the job right. For example, the first guy that we hired, he tore everything up and then started building. He did it incorrectly, so the next guy had to tear everything down and do it again. That second guy started to work on the plumbing. He did it incorrectly. We fired him, hired someone that could do the plumbing. That person wasn't an electrician, so he did the electricity wrong. So that fourth guy had to get rid of drywall, redo electrical, and he messed it up. And the fifth guy finally came in and was able to do it correctly. I spent a lot of time and, more importantly, money going through this learning curve. Since I've gone through all of this, we've never had a client that had to go through this themselves because we make sure to use vetted contractors whenever doing any work on apartments that we sell. But even before renovations, there's a cost that happens during the purchase process. One of the hardest parts about buying here is knowing what a property is actually worth. When buyers start looking at properties in Colombia, they quickly realize that there is no MLS, no centralized system. Listings are spread across multiple websites, and there's really no way to verify what price is correct. So at that point, the question becomes, how do I know that I'm not overpaying on this? We take your criteria and we search our database and multiple databases across the city in order to find your perfect property. What usually happens here with agents is that they'll send you a bunch of random listings to your WhatsApp that don't match your criteria, don't match your budget. On the other hand, we will only send you 5 to 10 listings that match exactly what you told us you're looking for. Furthermore, we do comps with you, and if you are an investor, we'll even look at the return on investment that you could potentially make. Our process avoids gringo pricing or overpaying on a property. Sometimes the biggest cost isn't something that you pay for, it's the deal that you missed. Some buyers go through the process, they view multiple properties, and they hesitate. Because of the uncertain market here, they want to compare everything and see everything. I'll give you a real life example. We had a buyer that was looking for a short-term rental. We showed him a couple properties, and one really stood out right here in El Poblado near El Tesoro. A good price, short-term rental approved, amenities with a cafe on the rooftop, etc. But when he saw it in person, he felt that it was a little too small for him. And on top of that, the building didn't have a pool, which is something that was on his list, so that box wasn't completely checked off. We went over the numbers with him, and the return on investment was exactly what he was looking for. Instead of sticking to that criteria, he wanted to keep seeing more properties. And lo and behold, a few months later, he contacts us and asks us if that Tesoro property is still available. Of course, that one was already sold. Luckily, we were able to find him another apartment that he liked and that met his criteria, so he pulled the trigger on that one. But he did tell us that he regretted not buying that one in El Tesoro because of the location, the return on investment, the amenities, and of course, the opportunity to do short-term rentals in there. The market moves fast here. Good opportunities don't stay up very long. So waiting too long doesn't just delay the process. It can cost you a good deal. And that becomes the hidden cost of trying to make a perfect decision. And sometimes it's not hesitation that costs the buyers deals, it's how they negotiate. When buyers get to the stage, this is where strategy really matters. Instead of approaching it strategically, they try to outsmart the process. They push aggressively on price without really understanding the market or the seller's position. We've seen buyers come in and make multiple offers, try to negotiate everything down, and keep pushing even when the deal's already fair. I'll give you a real life example. We had a buyer here that was looking at a few properties. He had a pretty good budget, over $500,000, to buy either a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom apartment. He wanted to have a view, he wanted to have a pool. We found him that. We knew the buyer personally because the buyer came to us asking to sell his property. So we knew his motivation. We knew that that guy wanted a certain amount of money in order to go develop on land that he bought out in the countryside. We explained this to our buyer. We said, look, we know his situation. We know his bottom line. Let's meet as close as possible to it in order to get your perfect property. He lowballed to begin with. And of course, the buyer got angry at us saying, hey, you already know my bottom line. I don't want to negotiate this. We went back to him and said, look, this is the lowest price that he'll go down to. And our buyer didn't budge. He didn't want to meet in the middle for $25,000. The man lost the deal. That property sold to someone for a little bit more actually. And now he's out of a property and he's still actively looking. That was a year and a half ago. And yes, people from Medellin, Los Paisas, we're known as being very shrewd when it comes to business. So a lot of foreigners will read about this or go on Facebook and read about this in the groups and then say, well, I need to go as low as possible and I'm not going to go up from whatever my lowest offer is. And a lot of people lose out. Eventually they learn and then they actually buy their property, but it takes months for them and it wastes a lot of time. That's why we've created our own system and we deal with the buyers directly so that we know exactly how low we can go and what that seller's motivation is. So if you're a serious buyer looking to purchase here in Medellin, you have a budget of over $150,000 and you're ready to move within the next 30 days. There's a link in the description below. Fill out the form and somebody on our team will get back to you. And if you're still doing research and you don't know the buying process here, check out this video that we did right here.